Hmm. That's good. I'm about to I mean, I'm live right now, but I'm about to start. What's up, guys? It's your boy Mizzy. So, man, so today, guys, I'm doing a live stream. I'm gonna talk about the Big Ten versus the SEC. I've seen this, but I mean, we've seen it the past years heating up. I'm also gonna get into Alabama secondary, and I'm gonna give my prediction for LSU season. For this upcoming season. So first of all, and then like I said, we do some questions. So first of all, let's get into the Big Ten versus SEC. Hold on. Yeah. We're gonna get into this Big Ten versus SEC first. So let's get into it. What's up, guys? It's your boy Mizzy. I'm here today to go over the Big Ten versus the SEC. Man, this is one of the big debates, especially since the Big Ten has been dominant the past 3 years. Indiana last year, Ohio State, Michigan. Practically ever since the NIL deals came in and players started getting paid in the transfer portal, Big Ten has been winning. So like I say, it is what it is. First of all, I'm like I say, of course, Alabama. I'm always pulling for the SEC, but at this time and moment, we do gotta be honest. The Big Ten do have bragging rights. It is what it is. When you win, and like I say, you're continuously winning. You've won a 3 straight, and yes, I know the SEC dominated for a longer period of time in the BCS, and Georgia won the two with college football. But like I said, it is what it is. The Indiana, like I said, last year Indiana beat Bama 38-3. And like I say, then you had Ohio State going their run. And then like I say, one thing about it, I just think the SEC, yes, they do have the I think better teams overall. Like, most of the time when people get in the debate about which conference is better, it's what do you consider better? If you consider what's the deepest conference, or do you consider what's the conference that has the most teams that can win a championship? And I do think the SEC, we'll see how the SEC does this year. But I do think this year the SEC, I don't know if we'll win the championship, but I think this year they'll come back kind of more right here. Because like I say, right now the Big Ten, I think these are the teams in the Big Ten that could compete for a championship. Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon, them really are, top heavy teams. But I think the SEC does have, like I say, Georgia, LSU, Texas, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Bama, A&M. Now, like I say, I don't think Oklahoma win a championship, but when people compare, when the SEC side is saying we're the better conference, they're talking about how deep the conference is. They say, the bottom of the Big Ten is not as strong, which is true. But, like I said, man, we just got to give bragging rights right now because, like I say, the Big Ten is the most dominant conference when it comes to competing in the championship. Now, one thing I will say, and I always say, it is it is it's an edge to a conference when your schedule is soft. Say like a Texas Tech. Now, like I say, I'm not saying Ohio State or Oregon schedule is like Texas Tech, but when you have a schedule like a Texas Tech, you can play through the season. You have a lot of games that you're blowing an opponent out. You can rest somebody. You can, you get more chances not to be in them long, drawn out games that's going all the way to the fourth quarter, like a Alabama or a Texas will have this year when they're battling a team. Alabama, Georgia having a game and it's fourth quarter going down to 2 minutes. Like, and we assume a lot of them teams will be banged up, have injuries. So a lot of them other teams that's playing a softer schedule do have one of the things they do have is like once they get to the end, most times they're more healthy. But like I said, and now with the NIL deals and the transfer portal, you can't build that depth like you could at one point when Georgia and Alabama were just 5 stars all through the roster. You don't have that no more. But like I say, you can't complain. You just got to figure it out. And I think at this point, the SEC just got to figure it out. They got to adjust. Use the big dog for many years. So now you got to step back, and I think they will adjust. Like I said, one thing it is true. Like I say, you see LSU and I will get into LSU in the prediction, but you see LSU they spending big money. You like I say Texas spending a lot of money in the NIL deals. So you will see teams adjust and start to figure stuff out. But I think, like I said, at this moment, we got to give it up to the Big Ten. And like I said, it is what it is. Right now, they are the most dominant conference. And like I say, this is what it is, guys. But anyways, guys, like, comment, subscribe, share. Appreciate y'all. Catch you next time. All right. So, y'all, we got the Big Ten versus the SEC out the way. So now we're going to get into, hold on, let me look this up. Alan, because I need this photo. Okay. What's up, guys? It's your boy Mizzy. I'm here today to talk about, does Alabama have the best secondary in college football? Last year we seen this secondary was dominant. Ray Hubbard back, Xavier Brown, Dijon Lee, Keon Sabb, a lot of young talent as well. Like I say, this secondary they should be really dominant. I would be surprised if this secondary was not in the top 5. They have to be. Like I say, it's just too much talent. So, first of all, I want to get into some of the passing defense stats from last year. So, this some of the stuff that makes this defense, really just elite and really dangerous. So, last year, passing yards allowed per game was 169 yards per game. National rank, that was 5th. In the SEC, that was 1st. Opponent's completion percentage versus that passing defense, 62.1. That was 10th nationally, 2nd in the SEC. Yards per attempt, 6.4. That was 8th nationally and 2nd in the SEC. So you see you see the secondary, how they're like I said, they're dominant. Now passing touchdowns allowed, they were 6th national rank, 1st in the SEC. So that's how you know how great a secondary is. When passing yards allowed per game, you're 1st, and touchdowns allowed, you're 1st. What's the biggest thing that you want to do as a defense? Keep the opposing team out the end zone. It's simple. So then last year, interceptions, they was tied 18th. That's 11 interceptions. Like I said, and it's a lot of games. It's a lot of interceptions they should have got. Ray Hubbard, he, got a lot of them. And they also created a lot of fumbles as well. I don't have the fumbles numbers right here, but you remember even in the UGA game with, they, like I say, they got the fumble stuff. We seen how they flipped the game and changed it. But then, like I say, opponents' passer rating was 124. That was nationally ranked 9th. So then, like I say, in the SEC 2nd. So you see in the SEC, and then the interceptions, they was 3rd for the SEC. But you see in the SEC, this passing defense was, like I say, 1, 2, 2, 1, tied 3rd and 2nd. So like I say, they was statistically, they was in top 3 and everything. So that just lets you know how dominant this defense is. And like I said, Xavier Brown, I feel like Xavier Brown is one of the most complete cornerbacks probably in college football. and his IQ when the ball is in the air, I think you just gonna see that even take a step up. You know, we seen last year how quick he can flip a field. When they played Tennessee, you seen how he caught the ball, pick six. Like I say, he just and a lot of teams don't even test Xavier, like because like I said, he's just that good. But like I say, Xavier Brown, one of the most complete cornerbacks, and Bray Hubbard. I think Bray Hubbard, he's just a turnover machine. He's a guy just got a nose for football, you know. And he could, like I say, I'm not saying he's this guy, but one of my favorite players is Ed Reed. And when I watch Bray Hubbard, you can tell he just got natural instincts playing the game. The way he, like I say, the Georgia game when he forced a fumble, you know, when he plays off a guy, comes back for an interception, you can just tell he has natural instincts. And then you got Dijon Lee, the 6'4" cornerback, like just a matchup nightmare. Like I say, he should be a lot better. The one guy that I really want to see step up is Keon Sabb. You know, Keon last year was good, but Keon, he hasn't got to the point that where he should be. As far as Xavier Brown, Bray Hubbard, and Dijon Lee, they're like a class above. But I think Keon Sabb really needs to step up and, you know, like I say, figure something out. And then also, like I say, you got the young guys. You know, you got Carmelo O'Neal from the portal. You got Drake Kirkpatrick. Like I say, this defense is really versatile, and I'm thinking the secondary should also be better because I'm thinking the defensive line will be better. One thing about last year, a lot of times the secondary had to be great because the defensive line wasn't getting to the opposing team's quarterback. We seen how many times last year Kane Womack had to do exotic blitzes. You know, he got to have a guy coming from the corner. You know, he got to have Bray Hubbard doing something. So because they couldn't create no pressure with none of the D linemen. So this year, I'm thinking that D line should have take a step in the right direction and get better. So now, no guys in the backfield, they don't have to hold up as long. And now, like I say, you got even more opportunity to get turnovers because, like I say, if you get more pressure on the quarterback, because, like I say, I think with Hill and like I say, some of the other guys coming off, Yanze Pierre coming off the line, I think they will create more pressure. Like I say, with another year under the belt, and like I say, man, so I think this defense, like I say, the secondary, I don't know if they'll be statistically the best, but I do think they will be top three. I say because I say, but they do have potential to be the best in college football. Cause like I say, this team is they're elite. And I say, and especially like I say, as far as Xavier Brown and Bray Hubbard, man, I don't know if people realize like these guys are. Like I say, I don't know Xavier Brown and Dijon Lee. They're probably one of the best cornerback duos in college football. Period. And like I say, I just think they're gonna have a dominant year, especially with Alabama. I think probably being able to score more points and not put the defense in bad positions. Cause last year Alabama couldn't run the ball. So when your offense can't run the ball, and it's good when they can score fast, but if they doing 3-and-outs and then your defense is getting back on the field so fast, you're tiring the defense out. So like I say, I think the offense will be better this year. Therefore, it will help the defense even more as far as the secondary. But anyways, guys, like I say, man, let me know in the comments. Let me know what y'all think. Do you think the secondary will be the best top three? Whether you have Alabama's secondary ranked going into the season? And appreciate y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Catch you next time. Alright, guys, let's get into this LSU pull up LSU schedule. Like I said, we're gonna get into the LSU Tigers. Alright. LSU pull up. Hold on, what? Alright, guys, there we go. So, matter of fact, hold on, this not the one. It's not the one I wanna, because I wanna. Alright, let's get them. What's up, guys? It's your boy Mizzy. I'm here today to go over LSU upcoming schedule, man. You know, it's a lot of pressure going into this year for the Tigers. It's a lot of changes. Like I said, you know, Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss, run that whole staff over. It's so much drama. You know, it's like drama just follows Lane Kiffin wherever he go. One thing about Lane, he's never boring. He's always entertaining. You know, they don't have a you know how the NFL had hard knocks. College football, if they had a hard knocks, it would be in LSU this year. Cause like I say, they just the most entertaining. But, you know, I think the number one job for Lane Kiffin this year is to change the culture. You know, with Brian Kelly out the door, you know, one thing that as far as change the culture and fix this offense, because you know, like I said, ever since 2019 when you created magic with Joe Burrow and all that talent, LSU, like I say, their seasons have just like, you know, especially as far as LSU standard. We know what the standard is at LSU. They've been far under that. You know, even last year, going into the season, people was picking this team. A lot of people was picking this team to win the championship. With Gus Nussmeier, you know, you seen how he didn't, you know, the offense. Somebody the offense could never get on the same page. You know, I don't know if it was Gus Nussmeier, the play calling, whatever it was. It wasn't, like I say, it wasn't working on the field. But you know, like I say, I think Lane Kiffin will fix the offense. You know, one thing I did like Lane, he said in one of his interviews, he said this team has to build. So he's even Lane is saying, look, let's taper expectations and realize this is a new team. You know, first of all, you gotta think about it. It's like over 50 new players on this team that came from the portal. That's a lot of new faces to get integrated with the team. And then, like I say, then last year, your O-line couldn't block. You got a whole new O-line practice. I think they just brought back one guy. But you do got talent. They got a guy in the portal. I think his draft stock is projected like top 10. I can't remember the guy's name, but I say, so you did get new O-line, but anybody who knows O-line stuff, it has to gel. You know, you never know if just because you bring in a lot of talent on paper, that doesn't mean that it'll mesh well and you'll just hit the ground running. But like I said, this team they paid over $40 million in NIL money. So I'm sure a lot of them boosters, they don't want to hear nothing about taper expectations. They want to hear, okay, one thing I think they definitely want to make the playoffs. That's what them boosters and LSU fans want. They want to be like, look, we definitely need to be in the playoffs. If we lost a first round exit, I think in people's minds they could be like, you know what, we're going in the right direction. We're going in the right direction. And then, like I say, last year you was 126 in rushing. I don't think you'll be that bad again. You know, like I said, I think Lane will, you know, help that somewhat. Cause like I say, with the passing game, we know he likes to air the ball out. So I think that will open up rushing lanes for the running backs. Then, like I said, you got a lot more talent with Lane coming in with all the guys from the portal. And then another thing, Sam Levitt, a question: how would he be in the SEC? Coming from you know, Arizona, you know, that's like I say, the competition you're playing is gonna be a big jump. Now you also is playing with more talent on your team. And I watched some of Sam Levitt. The guy can play. So I would never say the guy can't play. I think he will be fine, but I think he will have certain games, his growing pains, when he plays some of the tougher competition in the SEC. You know, but like I say, let's get into the schedule, guys. You know, like I said, you know, first of all, like I said, LSU first on the schedule. They got Clemson. I say, man, another team that's under a lot of pressure. Dabo. I just don't know. I don't know how much longer Dabo gonna be in Clemson. I know he has no championships, so that buys you time. It's funny. I didn't even realize he had been in Clemson that long. But then, like I say, when you think back, you like, okay, it makes sense. So, like I say, I just feel like that game. I think LSU talent wise, it's just they gonna win this game by like 17, 21 points. Just because I just don't think at Clemson, I think Dabo he's starting to get into the portal a little bit, but I think he's still stuck in his ways, and I think this game will show that like you still stuck back into the old era of college football. So I got LSU beating Clemson. Next game, Louisiana Tech. Obviously, that's a win. Like I said, everybody knows the game that everybody wants to see. At Ole Miss, third game of the season. And, it's interesting putting a game this big earlier in the year because, say, if it was the 10th or ninth game in the season, both of these teams could be a lot different. Ole Miss. So, like I said, this game, I have LSU losing. Now, of course, LSU could win because, like I say, they have plenty of talent. The one thing I do think, because it's the third game in the year and you're playing an Ole Miss, especially at Ole Miss, that gives the team even a little more But Trinidad Chambliss, they already have a lot of their offense integrated. So, like I say, you got your quarterback, so he already is familiar with the system. Yes, Lane is gone, but Trinidad is already comfortable with the team. And like I say, LSU with all these new faces, I think this game will show they may have some miscues. I think this game will show that okay, this team still has to gel. Now, I do think later in the season, the team that LSU may be better than Ole Miss. We'll see. But I think at that juncture, Ole Miss will be better that day. Trinidad will pull out some magic. And LSU, they may score a lot of points, but I just think Trinidad will figure out a way to win that game. Then all of a sudden, you got Texas A&M. So like I say, man, you play Ole Miss. That's the SEC guys. You play Ole Miss, then you play Texas A&M. So then Texas A&M, I think that game, I got LSU winning that game strictly because man, Texas A&M lost a lot of players on that defensive line and defense to the NFL. I do think that team will still be great. Like we see the money that Texas A&M spending, so the team will be good. And now Marcel Reed, I like him. But one thing about Marcel Reed, and we'll see if he's learning anything from last year. He's a high risk, high reward player. So he throws a lot of balls out there that could be picked or it could be a great play. I just think LSU this game will bounce back. You don't want to lose two games early in the season, like I say, especially with an SEC schedule that's just tough, and you got to get your wins early. So, like I say, I got LSU winning, beating Texas A&M. Then, like I say, next game at Nice, easy game. Everybody know they're gonna win that. Then at Kentucky, it's funny because Kentucky, where it's just like, what is Kentucky? Kentucky is always just teams that's just in like either the middle or lower part of the SEC. And then like, the game versus Georgia a couple years ago, they lost, but they stayed around, defense played great, offense played horrible, and it's just in this weird space when it's like, dang, when is Kentucky gonna figure it out and get better? But like I say, I got LSU winning that. I just think Kentucky, they just not there. They're just not there. Then playing Mississippi State, another team at the bottom of the SEC. Easy win, easy win. Well, I don't want to say easy because you never know SEC games. That could be you can have a tough game and still win. But like I said, I got them beating Mississippi State. Then at Auburn. Now, one thing about Auburn, it's tricky, man. Because like I say, when you play Auburn on the road and Auburn at home, there are two different teams. When that team is in Georgia and they have that crowd behind them And like I say, we just know all the magic that happens in that stadium. And like I say, stuff get fishy in that stadium, guys. I'm telling you, we done seen it. So that game, I got LSU pulling out a tough win on the road. A tough win. I think like I say, Auburn has a new coach as well. Like I say, just like LSU, they got new quarterback. So like I say, I know they hoping that their offense is gonna kick it up. One thing I do know, Auburn defense every year is pretty good. Like they never have a down year for it. They giving up 40, 50 points. Their defense is always good. Like I say, I think that defense will give them opportunities to win this game. And I think LSU talent and Sam Levitt, them guys, they would just figure out a way to pull that one out. So like I said, I got LSU winning that game. Then all of a sudden, they gotta play Bama. Like I say, Bama gotta go and play at LSU. This game, I got LSU losing primarily because, like I said, I think Alabama will shock a lot of teams this year. Not at that point, but I think this Alabama team is under the radar right now, and this is not an Alabama prediction, but I just think Alabama's under the radar, and their offense I feel will be a lot better. And then, like I say, their secondary, I think Alabama's secondary will be dominant this year, and I think this could be a game that maybe not Alabama offense just dominates, but I think this could be a game that Sam Levitt has one of those two interception games or one interception, one fumble, and Alabama defense carries them to a win. So like I say, I got Alabama winning this game. Then you play Texas. Texas is everybody knows on paper Texas is the team to beat in the SEC on paper. Like I said, we know that on paper doesn't translate to wins in real games, but I do think Texas wins this game. I think Texas defense, guys. I think Texas defense got a lot of dogs, and it will be really tough sledding. It's gonna be hard beating that team. You're gonna have to, like I say, we obviously seen that Georgia has Texas number, and that's how that's how sports work sometimes. Sometimes you can have a team number. But I do think Texas will, like I say, will take a step up this year, especially as far as just having more experience. Sark, he's under a lot of pressure, just like Lane. Sark under more pressure because, like I say, he's been in Texas longer, and no Texas fans they're getting itchy because it's like they're getting antsy because it's like, okay, guy, we're paying money, we're paying millions and millions and millions of dollars. When are you gonna figure it out? First of all, you can't be missing the playoffs. That's one thing you can't do. Like this team should automatically be in the playoffs. But like Sarkisian, he was talking about Texas Tech, which, like I said, I did agree with him about that. Texas Tech schedule is weak, but you got to figure out how to get your team to where you want to go. Texas Tech was in the playoffs last year, so whether their schedule was weak or not, you wasn't in the playoffs. Texas Tech was in the playoffs. Like I say, I do think, like I say, I think LSU will lose that one at Texas. So I got them losing two in a row right there. Like I say, Bama and Texas. Then all of a sudden, like I say, you go on the road at Tennessee. And then, like I say, when you they go to Tennessee, this right here, this is not a walk in the park game, guys. This is not a walk in the park. I've went back and forth how I feel about this game. I think just because Tennessee is a younger team, new quarterback, and I think Tennessee won't be as motivated at that point of the season because their team is already a lesser, I think their team will have more losses. So at that point, LSU will be playing more for trying to get in the playoffs, especially after losing. If it goes like I say, losing to Alabama and Texas, they're going to want to get back in the win column after two straight losses. So I think they win at Tennessee. Like I say, pull out a tough victory. Because like I say, it won't be easy to play in there. And then for the last game of the season, they play Arkansas. So like I say, that game I think obviously a win. You never know what can happen at the end of the year, but Arkansas is just like they're in the same boat as Kentucky and Mississippi State. Probably even worse because Arkansas, like I say, they really can't figure out that. At least Kentucky and Mississippi State sometimes have games that they push teams to the limit that they have a tough game. But like I say, Arkansas horrible. So I got LSU winning that one. So for the season, like I said, I got LSU losing to Ole Miss, Bama, and Texas. Like I say, so I got them going like 9-3 on the year. Like I say, and we'll see if that's good enough to get in the playoffs. You know, who knows? I think it will be a lot of 9-3 teams for the year. LSU, like I said, it's really, I think in the SEC, when we get to the end of the year, you're going to hear a lot of more people talking about expanding the college football playoff because it could be a lot of great SEC teams left out of the playoffs if you have say like a Bama 9-3 or 10-2. Then you have you got 3 or 4 teams to pick and choose from, and now we're trying to debate resumes once again, and we know NCAA, they do what they want. They don't have no criteria that this is how we pick who's the best team. But anyways, guys, like I say, that's it for the LSU schedule prediction. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Let me know in the comments, guys, how y'all feel about this LSU team. And any LSU fans, let me know, you excited for the year? Do you expect a championship? Do you expect a playoff win? What's your expectations for the year? But like I said, guys, appreciate you checking in. Catch you next time. Alright, guys, hold on. Then let's get into, so we got 3 videos knocked out. One of the things I want to get into is, hold on. I want to get into talking about Keelan Russell a little bit. So I was thinking about this guy, so I didn't write this down there in my notes and anything, but I said I don't know if this will be a video, but we'll see. What's up, guys? It's your boy Mizzy. So man, first of all, this is what I want to talk about. I see a lot of debates as far as Keelan Russell versus Austin Mack. And it's been one thing I keep seeing people say that I'm like, I just don't know if I agree with that all the way. A lot of people when they talk about the Austin Mack and Keelan Russell, everybody refers to how much experience Austin Mack has. And I'm always like, has he started a season? Has he started games? Because your experience is different when you're just playing mop up duty. People refer back to the Indiana game. They say, well, Austin Mack looked good when he came in then. That's great. That's great. But I don't think that signifies that he had just this world of experience over Keelan. Yes, he's been in the system longer. He was with Kalen DeBoer at Washington. That's great. But like I say, one thing, yes, he could be very experienced because he's been in the system so long, but you haven't started. So I think, because everybody always says, well, Keelan starts, he gonna make mistakes, which I agree. He will make mistakes. But I also think Austin Mack would make mistakes as well. Because like I say, he hasn't played a lot of meaningful football. So when you playing meaningful football and playing actual game reps, it's a big difference. It's a lot of people who look great in mop up duty and like just practice or whatever. We see, like say, Ryan Williams. We see a lot of the team, and the whispers around the team is everybody like, man, with Keelan in, it's a different level of excitement. He's a superstar. And I'm not saying Austin Mack's not a good quarterback, Because Austin Mack may very well be named the starter. He could have a great year. He could, but when we just look at who's played, when it's almost like when Tua Tagovailoa, when he was the quarterback backup, Jalen Hurts was the starter. All that year, I kept telling people Tua is the better quarterback. I understand why Nick is playing Jalen because Jalen had been in the system. So that's a big difference for Austin Mack. Austin Mack hasn't started at all. But Tua, like I said, Tua had was the backing up Jalen Hurts, so he didn't force Jalen to the bench until it was versus Georgia when Jalen played so bad in that first half that he was like, okay, let's switch up some things. And even then, when Tua came in, because he was a young quarterback, Tua made mistakes, but you seen his potential was higher. That throw he made to Devontae Smith to win the game, that showed, wait a minute, Jalen Hurts couldn't have made that throw. Like I say, even at, Jalen Hurts to this day still struggles with his passing and stuff. But we've seen that the more talented guy, I just feel should get on the field. Austin Mack, like I said, he could come in and play great. But I just don't want to see Keelan Russell, not play, and then all of a sudden transfers, and now he's playing for another school, and then he over there winning a Heisman or something, and then, Alabama fans be like, oh, wait, wow. Then that's another knock on Kalen DeBoer. I just hope Kalen DeBoer sometimes don't play it so safe. Like I say, you sometimes you got like, man, go out there and get it. Like you don't be scared to make a big bold move and ride with the young guy. Cause like even like I say the Xavier Crowell, the running back, if he's the best player and the season all of a sudden he's making more progress than Daniel Hill, he's running the ball better than Daniel Hill, then like I say, he should be the one playing more. Don't be scared to, like I say, put the young guy in if he's playing bad. You got to put the best player on the field, guys. Like I say, it don't need to be so much like, oh man, with this guy, he sat this long and he's been sitting in this system so long, so we feel entitled that he has to play. No, that shouldn't be what we're going by. It should be who's the best player to put on the field. Like I said. But anyways, guys, I just wanted to speak on that because, like I said, I keep seeing debates about Keelan Russell, Austin Mack, and all that. But, like I say, like, comment, subscribe, share, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Alright, guys. Appreciate you for watching the live stream. Finna end right now. And then, matter of fact, if you get on Twitch, we're finna start streaming gaming on Twitch. And I'll catch you over there. Appreciate everybody coming in.